Welcome to the Trauma Resonance Resilience podcast. My name is Lisa Cherry, and this is part of the Brightness of Stars series where I'm introducing you to some of the people in my new book that's coming out in May 2022. And it's an interesting book because I wrote it a number of years ago, and some of the things in there are very different. There's lots of reflections, and there's a whole section, if you've been listening to the other little vignettes and introductions of new people who have taken part in the book. And so today's one of those days where I get to introduce to you one of the new contributors, and that is Jamie.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Jamie. So good to have you here. And thank you for coming on and just sharing a little bit about your what, why, how, when, and where in 10 minutes. So my first question is always going to be why? What is your why? Why did you get involved in this project?
I got involved with this project because your book, Lisa, was the first one I read as I was really starting to explore my care experience and its impact on me and my sense of self and the way I kind of navigate the world. So I read your book and all these amazing stories of care experience people across the generation, and there was so much that resonated for me, and it just helped me to feel less alone. I guess that was the impact of the book. And it was just around the time when I was coming onto social media and starting to actually start to get in touch really with other care experience people and get involved with the Care Experience Conference, which actually was a lovely experience, but was also very activating for me because it was something I hadn't done before. So actually having your book as a way of kind of grounding me and hearing other people's stories was, hugely impactful. And really, I suppose, just to add to that then is, the importance of relationships for me, and those intergenerational relationships. They kind of gave me a stepping stone towards feeling comfortable and confident to be able to talk to other care experience people, start to build relationships with them. And that's really, I think, is the message of my chapter as much as anything, I hope, is that, the importance of relationships and particularly intergenerational relationships across the generations with care experience people, because it's an elephant in the room. We're not supported to connect with each other. And this is, for me, one of the huge failings of the system. We're often kept separate, apart, and dealing with our experiences alone, rather than recognizing that we actually have a collective healing process which we can achieve and come together and build community, which we've kind of begun that, but I'm not sure we've really fully realized that.
It's so interesting because in 1991 to 94, I went to uni and I did a degree in sociology, and I did my dissertation on how people in care were not encouraged to build relationships. And I'm going back a bit, so it's really interesting because you're a little bit younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I would be really interested in the younger people if they feel that's still an issue. And I wrote about it through the lens of thinking about how that affects your self-esteem, to not be connected to other people. It was at a time when I was still quite disengaged from my own story. So it's really interesting that you raised that, because I think it was so clear to me that we were just very fragmented, and I didn't know anybody else for many, many years who had the same experience until social media came along, and kind of all of a sudden there's groups and collectives and a whole range of things.
I'm thinking about what you're saying. I've been chewing some things over recently over the break, and I've been thinking kind of about the care leaver narrative, and where we're supposed to leave care and kind of get on and integrate. So that sense of like being in community often doesn't really happen until later in life, actually, when we're off, you know, because we get into a very practical way of having to manage and learn to be in the world much earlier than a lot of children and young people, I think, do. And then maybe, you know, that kind of healing work that comes along, which is actually about, healing isn't just about our own journey, it's about how we journey with other people, how we connect and understand. So I think there's something about that, how we embody a care leaver narrative, you know, and that's why I really like the term care experience, because it recognizes that this is a lifelong experience. Yeah, our experience, our embodiment, the way we've experienced care stays with us. It doesn't leave us. And then that in itself, you know, I think is, you know, it should encourage community. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so it's no accident really that, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I can feel myself wanting to go off on a multitude of tangents, but you know, I want to ask you questions, and I guess your whole focus, and it's really interesting because my work focus is all about relational approaches to everything, and relationships being the answer to everything. And your chapter was very much about relationships, and there's a reason for that, isn't there? You know, it's like perhaps having experienced the absence of them, and then the richness of finding them and finding a place where you can connect and you belong, kind of highlights what you didn't have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's absolutely what I wanted. You know, I suppose there's two aspects to what I wanted to hear. One is that every care experience person has a trauma healing story and journey, and that needs to be recognized and supported, and it's mostly not. Yeah, it's mostly not, but actually we need to recognize that has, and it's very much individualized as well. You know, I know we've had discussions before about the healing journey, and that being, you know, for me, it began with body practices like learning massage and getting in touch with my body more, and then moving into psychotherapy, you know, and I know you had a very, you know, your particular journey, but we need to be supported in that. And then secondary, it's about relationships really, you know, and really about how, you know, particular caring adults throughout our journey are significant. For me, it was absolutely teachers. You know, teachers grabbed me at particular times and beamed at me and supported me, and they were often healing ones. You know, there was a particular tutor when I was diagnosed with learning differences, who really picked me up and battled with me, but stayed with me. And then it was a therapy relationship, a therapist who was able to be vulnerable with me, you know, where other adults hadn't. So I feel like that for me is important. And then of course that moved into community, because I joined a community, diversity and ability, which was a community of people working with disability and intersectionality. Then I moved into therapy training, where you have to work in groups and hear each other's stories and support each other's. And that then moved to care experience groups, you know, and some of the groups like Reclaim Care that I've been part of. And I think what's really important for me, and I think is the bit that's often missing, is the subtlety of relationships. Because I think what often happens with care experience people, we get pulled into groups or into causes that say, come on, okay, we're going to fight against this, or we want to champion this cause, or etc., which I absolutely agree with, but we miss the subtleties of relational practice or real relationships, which is we need to be able to feel safe with each other. We need to be able to, you know, our nervous systems need to get to know each other, to regulate, to feel safe. And that actually starts with story, yeah, sharing our stories, hearing each other's stories reflected, yeah, hearing other care experience people say to us, I understand that, I experienced that, yeah. It's that work, and that for me is the fundamental, and where I am right now really with my work is very much about power of story, power of community, really starting from the fundamentals of let's be present with each other, let's hear each other, let's learn how to be together, that absolute subtlety of that. And I suppose that's a real message I want to get across in this is, you know, let's not miss this, whether you work in organizations, social services, etc. It's the subtleties of a relationship. I want to just share something actually. When I was doing the care experience conference, I invited a number of psychotherapists along to support people on the day. So I was organising along with one of my colleagues, Jackie McCartney, a dear friend of mine. One of my really strong relationships. I want to mention her here. So we were organising the pastoral support on the day, and a number of therapists came along. There were a couple of therapists who said to me, "Oh, we didn't know anything about care experience, And then there was one therapist who works with children and young people who had been working with care experience people. And she said to me, "Jamie, I just have to throw away all of any kind of artifice when I'm working with care experience people, or any of my therapist thing. I have to get down, I have to sit on the floor with them, and I have to say, and she said to me, you can ask me anything you want, and I'm gonna answer you." So it's that real reality connecting truth, and that's really important for I think professionals to know. None of this kind of blank screen or professional what do we call it, persona. We need to let that go and be real, particularly with care experience people, because they don't, we've got a lot of reasons to distrust. So
Oh, Jamie, pure wisdom. And just to kind of finish, is there anything that you would have liked to have put in your chapter that you didn't get, that didn't come that day when you wrote,
There's one part that I would have liked to have developed, and it was the section when I was exploring sexuality and queerness, and there's a bit where I'd speak about queer theory and activism, and it's something that I'm rolling around. This is almost like an invitation actually to everybody, because I believe that social theory, queer theory, particularly feminism, has a role to explore and open up care experience much more fully, because I think part of the issue with care experience, why we become stigmatized, why is because it is really because of the projection of the normative. What is a normal family? And actually, as we know, the nuclear family is pretty much a contemporary construction. I think it was post-war. I think I heard Donna Haraway say that in a brilliant podcast where she was talking about other types of families and kinship. So I feel like we need to really blow open the family, and really to understand that, for example, that care experience people have multiple families. This is natural and normal. Let's make this natural and normal. Let's not hide people's stories, and let's really embrace the potential of what family, of what kinship, of what community groups, etc. can be. And I really believe that these theories, particularly queer theory, which really kind of queers what we understand as normal, in a playful way, in order to actually open up other possibilities, And I think for me that was really helpful, because actually it made me kind of go, whoa, why did I not get told this story of my biological family? There's nothing wrong. I would have actually had a much easier life. I would have struggled less with my mental health, actually, if I'd known some of these, instead of projecting kind of fantasy or what I thought was going on, And I really feel, that's the part for me. There's some work done here, and I'm already starting to think about it. It was really inspired by a brilliant author, Nick Walker, who's just taken this lens with neurodiversity. So he's kind of created this term neuroqueer, and I feel like we can kind of do something similar with care experience here.
It's really interesting, because I put a tweet out a couple of weeks ago, just basically saying, can we stop this idea that there is a normal that we all have to circle around and to become, and if we're not it, then we're somehow faulty. And this morning, what came up on my Insta feed was an advert of Gabor Mate's latest book, which is called something like "There's No Such Thing as Normal." And I thought, yes, so that dialogue is actually really, we always sit on the shoulders of giants continuously, and his work will be an accumulation of lots of things that he's been grappling with and working with. But I just thought it's really interesting. We're finally, because the challenge is when we individualize everything and say there's just human experience and all the people within it, the challenge then is keeping that in community. That's the tension, isn't it? you can be the individual, but how do we be the individuals together? And I think that's a very contemporary challenge for everybody. And Jamie, it's been fantastic talking to you, and I know everyone is going to absolutely love your chapter. Details of the book will be in the show notes. And listen, thank you so much.
Thank you.